Luke didn't know how to be a Jedi. In the first movie, he's introduced to the Force. Yeah, it's this thing, it's energy and whatever, and here's your dad's lightsaber. He doesn't really, he starts a little bit of training on the Falcon, and then they get into the whole shootout on the Death Star and the blowing up of the Death Star. He doesn't use his lightsaber again. He's not a Jedi. He's not trained. He's not all powerful in the Force. We never get any of that from Rey. There were some problems there with her writing. Rey just stumbles out of the desert and can speak every language, can wield a lightsaber. She can stand up to a junior Sith Lord who's been training with Snoke for years and who also trained under Luke Skywalker. But you could have taken that in the second film, she's the bestest ever, and then have her big setback and then have her have to recover from that and then ultimately be triumphant in the third film. That would have been redeeming, and we probably would have had a little more emotional investment in her as a character. But what we got was Rey is perfect, Rey is the best, and it didn't resonate with anybody. And that's why we still have Rey action figures 5 years later hanging in stores unsold. The first movie had, JJ did a good job of setting something up. And yeah, he ripped off A New Hope big time, but I also think that he was motivated by a slight fear of failure as well. You are now going to be making the first new Star Wars movie in 15 or however many years it was. And you've got to make it perfect, or you got to make it perfect enough that it appeals to everybody. Was it perfect? No. Was it terrible? Absolutely not. But we only want you to build the foundation, and then we'll have somebody else come and build the house, and then the last person will finish it off, right? Well, he built the foundation, and he did a pretty good job of building the foundation. But then Rian Johnson came along and put a trailer on it. He wasn't even looking at the same plans. So whatever goodwill you built up in the first movie with the characters for people like me, it all went out the window because he wrote a standalone movie that was wearing Star Wars costumes, but it wasn't Star Wars. And the collateral damage of that was all the old characters are gone and all the new characters are terrible now. So now we have nothing left. So now we all went and saw The Rise of Skywalker sort of as the spectacle, right? We all went and stopped at the train wreck out of morbid curiosity how JJ was going to finish the trilogy.
One of the failings is the elevation of new characters over old rather than working in concert in partnership with beloved characters. But like you said, zero-sum game for Kathy. Did Johnson flat out ignore and defy J.J. Abrams? Or, with Kathy Kennedy's guidance, was he empowered to reject? We hear stories from J.J. and Ryan about how that transition went, that Ryan was writing before The Force Awakens had finished production. How did this go so far off the rails? Is it as simple as Kathy Kennedy gave Ryan a blank check, or is it more complicated than that?
I would think that it's probably more complicated than that, but I will say with the handoff, I mean, there was cooperation between JJ and Ryan because Ryan had asked for certain changes to be made to the end of Force Awakens, like who was writing on the Falcon to go to Octu and all that stuff, and he had specifically requested that because of what he was writing. At some level, it was the cooperation was there, either forced or collegial, right? I don't think JJ really understood where his story was going, but like I said, he built the foundation and take it where you want to go with it, I guess. And JJ has come back and said this, not explicitly. He's never used the word Star Wars in the sentence, but he's made a lot of statements, over the last couple of years about the importance of having a plan. So I think he recognizes that what he should have done if he was going to be the first guy is that he should have at least roughed out an arc for the 3 films, right? And say, okay, I'm starting here and I'm going to get it to this point. And then when you do it, whatever you do has to get the players to this point, right? And then the third guy has to take the players from that point and get them to the end. But know that the end is this, and that these people survive and these people are, if you need to kill them, whatever. Or this is the bad guy and he's going to be the bad guy for 3 movies or 2, whatever. So that general rough out, and then allow the creative within that framework to build their story. But he didn't do that. He just said, I created these new characters and these new robots and Donald Duck looking stormtroopers, and do what you want with it. And yes, that creates problems because without any particular guidance, Rian Johnson was free to do whatever he wanted. But I think that there's plenty of blame to go around, because Rian Johnson could have also said, okay, I'm writing this movie and this is what we ended with on your film. What were you thinking? Like, what do you see for these people? And then maybe he can build a story in his own way that moves along that path, that still is a movie that he likes to make or wants to make, but carries that forward. So he had this cooperation with JJ, but it was really more just to suit his own end. Like, well, I want these people on the thing because I'm writing this movie. But the big thing that stands out to me when you look back at it now and you think about it, Rian Johnson was independently writing the sequel to a movie that hadn't even finished production yet. I mean, I understand why they do this in Hollywood, because everybody's trying to make the monies. But how can you honestly say, I am going to create a sequel to a film when I haven't even seen the final cut yet? So Ryan wrote this independent standalone film that he could plug a few pieces into, but now at that point, I'm taking it in a whole different direction. Character, story, universe, mechanics. And it's because he was writing in a vacuum.
Watching The Last Jedi, it certainly doesn't feel like Rian Johnson had the full treatment for The Force Awakens. But if he had a script and Kathleen Kennedy blessed both films, it's really hard to reconcile the divide, the gap that comes from episode 7 to episode 8.
You would think you would reach out to the first writer-director in the trilogy and say, okay, let's have a little discussion about this. It doesn't feel like that happened. There, like I said, there was some cooperation, there was requests made, but it was really in service of whatever Ryan was writing. Again, everything seems to filter back up to Kathy, right? So maybe he's writing this film, he's got the script going, and he's got JJ's script, and he's like, well, I don't know, but I'm not sure, and I'm doing this, and then you hand it over the first treatment to Kathy, saying, well, am I headed in the right direction? It's at that point where she'd be like, this doesn't even fit in the other movie, like what we've been doing. Like, what the hell is this? Or she could say, this is great, keep going. Well, wait, so Luke's a punk, and Rey is the bestest ever, and we have blue-haired ladies slapping Poe? This is fantastic. It feels to me like maybe Kathy was standing between the two camps and serving her own purposes.
Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Galactic Initiative is a registered trademark, and other product and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement.